G'day ladies and gents, and welcome back to War Thunder. Today, I'm going to be doing something very lovely. I'm going to be dispensing the best Russian bias in the entire game via the Yak 9T. Now, as you can see from the bottom left-hand part of the screen, I am in a 4-man squad, and this is with my viewers. We've managed to get a couple more people in the lobby by Q-syncing. And I think we have maybe 8 or 9 people. I'm not quite sure. Yep, about that much. Maybe a little bit more. So we have a lot of people in the lobby flying basically Yak 9s and XP55s and anything else that is roughly at 4.0. This particular map, I'd like to just comment on briefly, is the newest addition to ARB. It's kind of like Zhengzhou, or whatever you might want to call it. I'm not quite sure how to pronounce it. All the Chinese people are probably rolling in there, whatever. They're probably going crazy because I can't pronounce anything properly. Do correct me if it is correct. Do let me know if it is correct. Do correct me if I'm wrong. But for now, we're going to be climbing on Smolensk, which is absolutely gorgeous. This map is beautiful. And it functions reasonably well as well. Like, would you look at that? A map that is both visually appealing and functionally usable. It's amazing. It is actually absolutely amazing to have a map that is not garbage. And obviously I say that slightly exaggerating because a lot of maps in War Thunder, at least for RRB, are fairly decent. A lot of them offer, varying game styles and varying bonuses to, certain things. For example, Afghanistan gives you a bit of a bonus if you're in an afterburning jet as opposed to if you're not in an afterburning jet. Things like the Hurtgen Forest and the maps where you start with a decent air spawn give a decent advantage to planes that don't climb as well but rely on that high altitude performance. And the smaller maps, like, I guess Smolensk is a little bit of a smaller map. I guess, like, certain aspects of Smolensk make it a little bit small. It is quite like a rounded map. All of the important things sort of happen in a little circular area rather than, for example, in Normandy, where they happen along a corridor. Now, what I'm doing here may seem a little bit counterintuitive, but I am in a Yak, and the thing that Yaks do best is low altitude performance, especially the earlier Yaks like the 9T and the 9K. But it may seem a little bit weird that I'm climbing and I'm gaining altitude where I perform worse. But it will become apparent in a moment. Essentially, the reason why you climb anyway is because having the altitude is way more important than having the performance. If you can start off with an extra 1,000 meters on your opponent, that gives you much more advantage than having him dive on you, putting you straight away on the back foot. This is really important to notice. Every time you play something that performs well at low altitude, that is a propeller-driven aircraft or an early jet, you have to consider, well, does this mean that I should be climbing? And for me personally, if you're in a plane that is, I guess, battle rating 8.0 or below, I would probably climb. The only exceptions being those that top out above 1,000 kilometers per hour. I really like the idea of climbing in a low altitude performing plane as well, for another reason, and it might not be as apparent at first, but when you think about it, it is a little bit better. If you can outdo an opponent that does better at high altitude and force them to dive, that slowly brings them to your altitude where you're king, and you shouldn't have much of an issue fighting them there. That's where the real fun begins. But the Yak 9T being the ultimate Russian bias plane, I have to be going for the bombers. And the first target I take out is that B-25. The 37mm cannon with air target belts is beautiful. It is one of the best cannons in the entire game for props, with a higher caliber than 30mm, obviously. it just fires quite nicely. It's very, very high rate of fire. It has a decent muzzle velocity, and it also has a decent ammo capacity. One of the reasons why I'm not flying the Yak-9K is because the ammo capacity is a lot lower. And so I can pretty much do the same damage with a smaller caliber gun, but I have more shells. So why wouldn't I take the one with more ammunition and more damage potential here? So as my squad mates are engaging a couple of other enemies, I take a Yak-9 here, and he gets absolutely set on fire by a beautiful shot by one of the guys in voice chat. I'm coming up against an LA7, and hopefully I can try and get him off my squad mate here, but the P47 and the P38 there are grabbing my attention. I'm going to wait for this guy to turn into me, and then at the last second, lure him into a false sense of security so that he takes the bait, goes for the dogfight, and I immediately have the advantage here. Remember, the P47 performs at higher altitudes better than the Yak-9, yet here I am, being a little bit smart and playing to my advantage. Now I'm at, if I dive maybe 1,000 meters, I'm at my altitude. This is where the fun begins for me. This is where I play the best. And I have the P47 exactly where I want it. The P38 as well. You can see I'm going to turn in towards him because I'm pretty sure he's focused on the MB. And maybe I can get a couple of cheeky shots here, putting that 37 to work. And I get nothing. That is one of the issues with the 37. You could get an absolute wonderful shot, like a nice little kill. You could get, I guess, this. That was a beautiful shot. Absolutely wonderful. But you could also get nothing. You have to really learn to place the shots and never spray, ever. Spraying is going to be your worst enemy here. What you need to do is you need to take time to aim the shot. Never waste a bullet, because every single one of them is precious. And I'm going to need every single bullet that I can get if I'm going to fight these two CO5s, or 205s, and the TAR 154. The 154 is probably going to be a little bit interesting, but the 205s are where the fun is really going to begin. I make a mistake here of committing to a head-on, very, very dumb maneuver, but now I'm in a dogfight, and a three-way dogfight here with the two C205s behind me and the 154 about to join. I'm going to go into the vertical a little bit because I know that they've been wasting their energy doing maneuvers and they can't follow. I'm also at my playground, my altitude playground, if you will, of a couple thousand meters, and this is exactly where I need to be to shine. I originally turned in and then turned out at the last second to avoid the 154's his fire, and now I have him exactly where I want him. Well, not quite where I want him, because if I had him where I wanted, he would have gone vertical and stalled himself out for me. But that's okay, because he's no longer a threat. He's a kilometer away from me, and he's not facing me. As soon as he turns in towards me to face me, that's where I know he's a threat again. And that's where I know that I need to engage him, and he starts to do that, so I start to fall back. The 205 is also alongside me, and the other one is coming back, so I have to be really careful. I go for a quick shot, I miss, and I don't commit to the head-on this time. I go vertical, and I take a little clipping from the pasta shooters, and my squad mate comes in to save me. Sets one of them on fire, and now it's a 2v2. The tables can turn extremely quickly here, and they're about to turn even quicker, where I get, I think that was my shot, getting the TAR 154. Very, very lucky. Very lucky that I didn't ram him, and extremely lucky that I didn't die. But one well-placed 37, and it finishes him off more than enough. So, we've managed to win what was a 1v3 because my teammates showed up at the right time, and I made enough plays for it to be somewhat viable. You can see here now we're just chasing down the last guy. That's pretty much game over, and climbing is what saved me. Having that initial energy, having that initial altitude to play with was extremely helpful and was extremely valuable. So if I hadn't climbed, I probably would have been finished off quite quickly. And having the teammates there at altitude with me meant that we all had a bunch of energy to use on these 205s and on the 154, and we could win. And we could win quite convincingly. This is what you have to consider when you're flying a plane, prop specifically, that performs well at low altitude. Sure, your LAF Mark 9 might perform well at low altitude, but you're going to want to take some. You're going to want to get a little bit of altitude, and maybe you'll force the C205 to go into a turn and end up dead like that. This plane is fantastic at low altitude because of that. It's able to force planes into a dogfight that they're never going to be able to win, because they're constantly going to lower and lower altitude, and they're constantly getting shafted, put into a position where they're not going to perform as well, and the Yak is able to finish them off. If you can win that initial dogfight, and you need your teammates to do that, then you have a pretty easy run all the way through. And this is why I'm happy to fly these low tier Yaks. The higher tier Yaks, not as fun, because you always get planes and people that know what they're doing. But anyway, ladies and gents, I hope that's a bit more of a positive video for today. Thank you very much for watching. Take care, and I'll catch you next time.